Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around doing something in the world. This week, we're at part 2 of my conversation with Kenny Allen, singer, songwriter, music producer, and designer based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So let's get right back into the conversation. Okay, so let's get a little bit more into the business of what you do. So we know you do music, you're a songwriter, you're a singer, you produce some artists, you've worked with many different artists. Tell us a bit about how doing that business and making an impact, because I think that you're a local celebrity in Addis. So tell us more about how the journey of getting to that from a business perspective took place for you. And I guess that also includes the creative perspective, but tell us more about that story.
I had recorded 3 albums of my own before I came to Ethiopia. And I sort of felt like, hey, if I can produce my own albums, then I could do it for other people. And that became more of the business for me, because I sort of made my own albums because I just didn't have the money to hire anybody to do that. So I said, okay, well, I can offer that as a service. And that was really the beginning of it. I produced a reggae album from a Jamaican artist named Sidney Salmon, who is really a fixture in the community. And I had this sort of dual perspective. I had really got in the mix of Ethiopian instruments, and Ethiopian has these modes of music, of scales. And so I became sort of an expert on Ethiopian music, as one could be. But I got into it and I understood it, and I really worked with some powerhouses in Ethiopian music. So that was my one up, because I knew R&B, I knew hip hop, I knew jazz, and then I also had access to Ethiopian music. So that's pretty much where my business, is where that extra thing, that unique contribution led to business. Because then other people said, hey, I want that sound, but I also want it to still be Ethiopian. So that's kind of like where the value of the business came. So it really became more like production.
Yes.
As a music producer. And then I saw my own music making as sort of just for because that's what I do and that's what I love. And it was not necessarily the bread and butter of my existence,
Okay. Got it. And so you did a lot of producing, and then you're performing and you're writing. Do you write songs for other artists?
I do, but I mostly work with other songwriters who come with songs, and then I will produce them. I will create more compositions. I have written songs for people, but it's not necessarily my, it's not something I do often. I'm more on the musical production side of things.
Okay, got it. And so now let's talk a little bit more about your design, because you mentioned brands that you've worked on and brands that you've built. So tell us more about Kenny the designer.
So I had started by making clothes for myself, because in my earlier days of artist, I would go to the thrift store and find these amazing treasures.
Sure.
But that did not happen. I didn't find that over there. So one day I went to a local boutique or men's boutique, and I found this jacket, and I thought it was amazing. And I was like, oh, this is a beautiful jacket. And I got on stage and saw somebody with the same jacket. So I was like, no, this is not going to happen. This is not a good look for me. So that's when I really started to make clothes for myself. My mom actually sewed clothes for me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I came from a sort of like make your own thing kind of background. But with the clothes, I had worn these shirts that I made, and some guys in D.C. who I knew, they were like, man, you should go back home and make your own store. And I was like, man, that's really a good idea. So I actually came up with the name Ndegeocello, which in Amharic means one day.
One day.
Yeah, it was a bit of a play on my name and was also quite an inspiring kind of phrase. And I also modeled it after the spirit of like people who work their whole lives to get to a place that they, Olympians. And when you go to the Grammy and you perform at the Super Bowl, these larger than life moments that happen as a result of all the years of trying to do it, So,
Yeah.
uh, this was the spirit. And then we started making a laptop case for a friend. And I was like, man, this is interesting because the clothes were not fitting me properly. So I couldn't really take that to a large, small, medium level. But
Mhm.
the bags were very universal.
Yeah.
And I just found that I became a little bit more prolific with the bags, and my perspective and the way that I approach the bags is more like like art pieces. They're usually one of ones within their combinations of African textiles and Ethiopian leather, which is, some of the best leather in the world because they consume so much meat. So there is and they're organic. Most of the cows and animals are raised organically. So it results in a unique quality of leather. I'm sorry if I went off too far.
No, 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 no. That makes so. Yeah, we definitely know that East Africans are beef and the cattle industry is pretty large there. I mean, there's
Hmm.
a lot of between Kenya and Ethiopia, and I believe there's another country in the region. They supply Europe with a pretty large percentage of their beef.
Yes.
Yeah, so
So that also translates in leather, which is ironic because now I'm vegan. So
oh, wow.
I slightly battle with the idea, but I also know that in this particular case, no animals are slaughtered for, specifically for
Perfect.
making a
Yeah.
hide. So it's something that I in the future I would like to actually, come to a full consistency in life because I know there are other options. I know in South America, there's a company that makes sort of leather out of pineapple skin. So at a certain point, I would like to sort of really exercise my creativity and find alternatives. As I know that the planet needs a little bit of a break from all the things that are required to produce meat and animals and things like that, as well as the obvious ethical
Yeah.
reasons behind it. But it's an age old tradition coming back from the cavemen. So
Yeah.
I
It
try
really
to
is.
find a balance in it all.
And I think that's the key. It's really about balance. Yeah. So, okay, so then you've evolved into this bag and an accessory focus. And
Yes.
so then what kind of logistics are you selling mostly locally? What are the logistics about moving product?
Yeah. I mean, actually, just recently, we've just acquired an import export license. So that is going to kind of change the game a little bit. But my sort of my model is more like an artist. Like
Okay. Got it.
and so I'm really focused at the moment kind of on direct to consumer, and our client base Addis Ababa is slightly limited. It's a luxury item that you don't need.
Sure.
So our client base, although they were very loyal, it's a transient place at times for sort of this what they call them ferengi, which is like people who are not from Ethiopia. They come and go, and sustainably, and especially at this particular time where times are changing, we're really like about to go really hard on online sales. And I also would like to connect with Pan-African stores on the continent that are featuring designers from the continent. I think that is really an aim of mine. I don't want to like nothing against large chain stores and things like that, but I would like to keep the dollar, within people of color. I mean, for reasons that I feel like that is something other cultures do. And I think that is the strength of a culture is how you recycle the economy. Like to be quite frank.
Yes, it is. That I mean, it's it's proven itself in the data and statistics. So you are not off on that one. But I will.
So in a politically correct world, it's, you have to say these things in
Sure.
a way as to not come off as, but I don't feel like, I'm not trying to offend anybody, nor am I trying to exclude anyone or prevent people who are interested in the products. But this is a real, it has become a mission of mine as
Mhm.
I've been led to this wonderful experience living on the continent.
Mhm.
I would love to see Africa really rise, and there's so much to be done. And that's the beauty. That's one of the things that really inspires me to stay there. Is like I know that I can impact one person in an amazing kind of way, and that's a beautiful opportunity and responsibility that I've been willing to accept.
Sure. And you feel like you can actually see how that impact replicates itself through the community as like I think what you're also envisioning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more people I can employ and really expose, you can't always imagine a better reality if you've never seen it. You can read and you can watch movies but you don't really know the wingspan. I know that because I found myself 10,000 miles away creating, this. And when I say brand before that, it's to me, the bags are an extension of a lifestyle. I'm
Mhm.
promoting a lifestyle of a creative lifestyle from a unique perspective. And, if you look at a lot of people like a Bob Marley, like a Lenny Kravitz, these are people who come from different backgrounds. And I think the search to find who you are lends itself to a creativity that is unique and that is really powerful. It's really global and it's really dynamic. So this is what I think I'm creating, in a different kind of way, but it's really powerful.
So that's interesting. The search to find who you are. For many and most, I mean, I think a lot of people are searching, particularly now. Your experience sounds wonderful. Everything was great. You may have had some small pitfalls or what have you, but tell me a little bit more about some of the challenges that you have had to overcome in being and living in a place that is just foreign.
Yeah. I mean, I speak from an African perspective in that we know that Africa has been built around tribalism. No
Mm.
matter which country you're from, the root of Africa is who you belong to or what tribe. So, in that regard, in Ethiopia, I'll say specifically, is that it tends to stay within a tribe. Like somebody's mama wants you to marry somebody in the same tribe because that's just right. So me coming from none of them, or coming from the outside, I've
Mhm.
had a real challenge because I know people within it have challenges. So I have actually been super inspired by the resistance of being embraced.
Okay.
That has been some of my most pivotal moments, is like actually feeling excluded and feeling the need to come with it in an even stronger way that also doesn't offend anybody, or like I have felt this need to go beyond what happens in Ethiopia and go beyond what happens as an African American. So the challenges are that no matter how hard you try, really, and that's why I have really been so adamant about the language, because in Ethiopia, language is a really, really landmark aspect of integrating. So
Yes.
I think really, if I were to recommend anybody who is going to any place, is to learn the language, even if it's a dialect. That is like how you are going to get access to the things that local people get access to. We
Right.
all know that, if you go to the non-local place, it's going to cost more, or it's going to be harder to find, or it's not going to be the authentic. So what you seek to really get, if you're not from a place, is the authentic life, because that's the one that's been proven and tried and true, based on climate, based on conditions, and that's what's going to make life feel more like home.
Right. Right. So how did you go about learning the language?
Very early on, I discovered that Amharic language, or Ethiopian language, is less of a language and more of a lifestyle.
Oh,
And it's not something you can like really learn like you would learn a Romance language. like because there's so many exceptions to the rule, and Ethiopia has its own alphabet and its own script.
Yes.
So it's like I just said, look, I can't do this like I would do Spanish or French. I have to live this. And it's taken me a long time, and a lot of people say, how come you're not fluent in Amharic? Because, and I say, look, it's not that I don't speak Amharic, I just don't know all the words.
Right. I mean, ultimately, you're like a 12-year-old. So
Absolutely, and an emotional 12-year-old, and because I'm a songwriter, I
sure.
speak and think emotionally. I think about how to capture the human experience with words and with sound.
Yeah.
So it's really been actually quite challenging because I'm an English major. I have a
Language.
degree in English, so
Sure.
my thoughts do not always correspond to my language abilities. So that's been really the most frustrating. But I basically took it on like, look, I'm not afraid to make mistakes, but I also don't have time for you not to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Exactly. That's basically the balance of and motivation for taking on any language. It's a fearlessness, but then it's being able to say you don't know the word and helping everyone get to the root of what everyone is trying to communicate.
but also in the same sentence of language, Ethiopia is the only, African nation not to be colonized. So they're not really like wanting you to learn. So, it's hard for me to even get like a translation, like that's been like sort of one of their shields of armor
Right.
versus an outsider. So that's why I can say that I have not fully gotten it down in this time, because you say, hey, what does that mean? They'll be like, well, there's really no word for that. And
Mhm.
even the way they express themselves
Sure.
is different. It's not like, let me translate it in my mind. It's like, that's not the way we would say that, So it's uncovering a secret code.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You just put that in context because that's right, because they don't have a colonizer's language to like as a crutch for others.
yeah,
Necessarily
absolutely.
have their own authentic selves. So that's very interesting.
So I've sort of learned it through the music, and I just try to engage with non-English speakers every day, and I try to pick up one or two words. I'm not hard pressed to get it all in one dose, And I also have this feeling that one day I'll wake up and I'll just be fluent, because what is required me to do is become the ultimate listener.
Yes.
There's a reason why ambulance sirens are loud and dogs bark when they're under duress. Like, these are survival things. So in order for me to survive in a place that I don't understand language, I have to be super keen on inflection. And
Yeah.
that has also benefited me in music. I've worked with French speakers, I've worked with Spanish speakers, and I don't understand a word that their music is saying, but they always say, I don't know how you know what the feeling is because you don't speak French. And I'm like, I feel it. I know when I look for the ends of the words to see where you go with it, with the tonality. And I think that has helped me become a better musician and a better music producer.
Right. Absolutely. That's wonderful. So speaking of mindsets and getting your head in that place, this is where I go into my mindset hack segment. So
All right.
this is where I ask what your favorite or an innovative mindset hack is that you can imagine or one that you know of.
Okay, mindset hack. I might need a definition for that.
So you're a little bit of a techie, right? So it's basically straightforward what it looks like. So it's a way to hack into a mindset that is innovative.
Okay.
Mhm. Or different, or your favorite, or just a way of doing things or a way of being that is somehow inspiring.
Can you give me an example?
Okay, so one of my recent guests, his mindset hack was to shed the struggle mentality.
It could be for any. It's like to change the way of thinking in order to accomplish a goal or a destination. If I could simplify it, would you say
Sure,
that? Or
sure, a way of being, exactly. Mhm.
well, I think one of the things that I always do. I mean, and it's part of a package. I always visualize, because I believe that if you know where you are and where you're going, then the pieces that are inside those two places they tend to manifest themselves easier. I
Yeah.
know some people who sort of just get in the car and drive and they don't know where they're going. And you could find yourself, down the wrong path of the street, like quite simply. So I always try to identify what it is I'm trying to accomplish
Okay.
for at the beginning of anything. And I think what people appreciate about me over there is that I always finish. Like I never start something that I don't finish because I never start something that I don't know what I'm trying to finish up. And that changes. It's like a course, a navigational course is subject to change, but I always try to keep my eyes on what it is I'm trying to get to. And I feel like that prevents you from, floundering, if you will, or it prevents you from aimlessly going in a direction.
Right.
So,
So there you have it. Perfect.
all right.
Finish what you start and
Absolutely.
visualize.
My late nights are notorious for just laying in bed and imagining how to get from point A to Z. It's a bag. Maybe it's a bag. How do I combine these things? And I like to just sort of be prepared for the next day by sort of projecting what it might be like.
That's awesome. I think that's something that we often did more as children because I
Mm.
remember doing that pretty much throughout my childhood. Like
Mm-hmm.
from the preparation it took from setting out your clothes and packing your lunch and
Mm-hmm.
then when you lay down to sleep, there was that thought process. I find I do less of that as an adult, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember that practice and I think it's definitely an effective tool for another of my guests mentioned future casting. So that's
Mm.
the thing that goes into that. So wonderful.
It's sorry, just really quickly. I still lay out my clothes, but sometimes when I wake up the next day, I know that's what I don't want to wear.
Right, right. That's funny. So yeah, there's more flexibility in adulthood, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let me ask you one of my kind of let's explore you in a little bit of a different way. And because you're a content maker and a designer, I'm wondering, what do you read? What are you reading now? Or what are some of the best reads that you've come across?
Well, I actually have been turned on to a lot of literature and art and photography from the Czech Republic, ironically, because one of my recent great customers or clients with my bags happened to be the wife of the ambassador of Czech Republic in Ethiopia.
Oh,
So in like the 80s and the late 70s, sort of, somewhere before 1990, that sort of 60s to 80s, there was a support from the sort of, I guess, the communist government to support these artists who then they were very talented and they were became the voice. And a lot of them, they're actually African people who are Czech Republic citizens who are originating in Africa. So the ambassador actually gave me several books of these African authors and artists who basically expressed their art in what was then, Russia, So it's
wow.
the perspective and especially the art. I mean, I've become a bit visual lately, so I'm actually a lot drawn to the styles of some of the
Mhm.
typography that they use in sort of, movie posters and things like that. So I am currently reading a book called The Unbearable Lightness of Being by an author called Milan Kundera.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's a well
so
book, Unbearable Lightness of Being. Yeah.
so so this is a cliche, but I also really often go back to The Secret because
Oh,
I find that my early manifestations are coming to light based on
mm,
maybe 6 or 7 years ago when I wrote down like all the things that I desired and sort of lived in that path that had already happened.
yeah.
It's really unfolding, and that has been an amazing sort of revisit. I revisit it often. And lastly, I would like to tell you about a guy called John C. Robinson, who was AKA the Brown Condor, who was one of the original Tuskegee Airmen who
Ah,
fought in the Ethio-Italian War as the personal pilot for Haile Selassie. So I have just recently finished that, and it's something that I'm interested in pursuing. I would love to make that a movie. His life story, because it's so interesting. He grew up in Mississippi and in very unfavorable conditions, and always had this dream to be a pilot, and then found himself like as flying the king's exclusive airplane. So I'm very much inspired by people's stories and success stories, which seem to always have a root in their early childhood, because I think that's when you get the vision
Yeah.
early on.
Yeah.
People who are successful, they get there because it takes, even, rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. Everybody who talks about him always says, I always felt this from him.
Yeah.
And he also had a connection to the U Street corridor, where I was also making music.
Of course.
A lot of my friends,
Yeah.
were his contemporaries in early theater. And they
Mhm.
always said this guy had this sort of calm demeanor, as if he was focused on a vision
Yeah.
that he knew. Nipsey Hussle, Kobe Bryant, all these people that unfortunately we've lost in this last year, they all have a story that they knew, that they possibly had a feeling inside
Sure.
that their time to accomplish was not forever, and this is very motivating to me, especially, I know I've been given this journey, this unique experience, and I just really want to make the most of it and inspire as many people as possible.
Wow, that's wonderful. So that's a wonderful way to start moving towards the end of our conversation. So I want you to tell us where we can find you, where we can find your music, where we can follow you and learn more about what you're doing on an ongoing basis.
Sure. I mean, my music is all on kennyallen.bandcamp.com,
Okay.
that's like, I have 7 albums there. And I also have YouTube, youtube.com/KennyAllenMusic.
Okay.
And we are actually about to relaunch the Bag website. We had a retail store that we were really focused on for the last year, but due to the pandemic, we decided that a retail experience was not, as it used to be.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
are really going to do a full relaunch of the Bag website at undken.com. And at the moment, you can really sort of catch a glimpse of the story at instagram.com/UNDKEN. And that's really where that's where my story is anchored.
Okay. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, Kenny, it's been wonderful speaking with you and learning about your experience from childhood.
Sorry, really quickly, I do want to give a really big shout out to our mutual friend Yana Fleming, who has
Oh,
just been,
yes.
she has been like relentlessly promoting the idea of the global nomad. And she is the epitome of a person who has learned how to adapt in the midst of a creative journey. So I do want to really give her a big shout out, because she is always, I mean, she will appear out of nowhere with a beautiful connection. And we
Right.
love people
Yes.
who have a life dedication to connecting people. And I love that.
Yes, that is true. That is definitely, she was a recent guest. So yeah, definitely what I will do, because we have some, again, very rich show notes this week, guys. So we'll link to Yana's episode. She's a 2-parter. And all of everything that Kenny just mentioned about where to find him, those will also be in the show notes, along with the books he's reading and just a lot more that gives some color to our conversation. I also want to say, check out Kenny's YouTube channel, because he has a documentary that is great. It's The Journey to Forever.
Yeah, Journey to Forever.
Yeah. So is that your last album?
That was 2 albums ago, actually. That
Okay.
was 2018, and then I had an album called Mind Over Matters, and just recently, during the pandemic, made a 6-song EP that was inspired by the times, which
Oh, wow.
also sort of translates to the racial tensions that's going on in America. Like, struggle is kind of universal, no matter the culprit. And so these songs are about just pushing through times of struggle. And I really, it's called More Love Now. And I think it's really, my mantra is that love is really the answer to all the world's problems. Whether it's the love for animals or the love for people or it's love for each other. This is really the things I would love to leave with you at this time.
Awesome. Yes. And I agree. More love now, as in capital N, capital O, capital W, LOVE. More love now. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for taking some time away from your family to speak with us. Well, Glocal citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around doing something in the world. You can always catch us at glocalcitizenspod.com. You can catch us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, wherever you find your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, share, comment, like. We love to hear from you. And as always, bye for now.